Live from Revere, Massachusetts, this is a Channel 11 news special.
Governor, are you prepared to take the constitutional oath?
I am.
You place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
May I congratulate you, sir.
On February 6, 1911, Ronald Wilson Reagan was born to Nellie and John Reagan in Tampico, Illinois. He studied at Eureka College. There he studied economics and sociology. He also played on the football team. He also acted in school plays. Then, after graduation, he became a radio sports announcer. A screen test in 1937 won him a contract in Hollywood. During the next 2 decades, he appeared in 53 films. As president of the Screen Actors Guild, Reagan became involved in debates over the issue of communism in the film industry. He toured the country as a television host, becoming a spokesman for conservationism. In 1966, he was elected governor of California by a margin of 1 million votes. Then he was reelected in 1970. Then, on January 20th, 1981, he became President of the United States.
On February 6, 1911, a leader, a brother, and a fatherly figure was born. With an iron fist, Ronald Reagan spurred change in our economy and brought our country out of an era of chaos. Hello and welcome on this pleasant Monday. I am Bill Sawyer.
And I'm Diane Baker with an 818 Morning News Special. Remember, during this newscast, you can live tweet us at news_channel 11.
Upcoming stories this Monday morning with the legacy of Ronald Reagan, an economic persuasive political tycoon. The 40th president used conservation, a tactic that used even in his days as a radio teleprompter, to implement Reaganomics to help the country's economy.
Chief White House correspondent Brian Williams has been tracking all the latest impacts of Reaganomics. This fine Monday morning from Washington, good morning, Brian.
Thank you, Diane. So today I'm standing in front of a dry erase board and I'll be discussing Reaganomics. Oh, excuse this. Reaganomics. And as we all know, during the early 1980s, America faced a major economic crisis. In response to this, Ronald Reagan implemented income tax cuts and small business loans. He believed that if we lowered taxes, people would have more money to spend, thus stimulating the economy. This is what Reagan called supply-side economics. Supply-side economics. All right, that's it. This proved to be partly successful. In 3 years, Reagan had effectively lowered income taxes by 25%. This came at a cost, though. The government was forced to borrow money to fund public projects, leading to deficit spending. In spite of this, small businesses thrived from bank loans made accessible by Reagan. In order to further this growth, Reagan eased restriction on industries, allowing businesses to grow without government interference. Had there been more restrictions imposed on these industries, business growth would have been stunted. By 1983, the effects of his actions became evident. Inflation decreased and more people found jobs. Confronted with an economic crisis, Reagan led a mostly successful presidency through his enduring efforts to restore the economy. Back to you.
Feeling the love, Reagan. Feeling the love.
I agree. New this morning, having made improvements economically, it was no surprise when politically Reagan named 3 conservative judges to the Supreme Court, one of whom was Sandra Day O'Connor, who became the first woman to sit on the nation's highest court. We have with us today a special guest, Sandra Day O'Connor, so to further the story. And introducing her, Shaniqua Gonzalez. How are you today, Shaniqua?
Thank you, Bill. I'm here today at the Supreme Court to talk about Reagan's appointment to the Supreme Court during the 1980s. He made a choice to appoint the first woman called Sandra Day O'Connor to be part of the Supreme Court. He had also appointed William Rehnquist, Antonin Scalia, and Anthony Kennedy. President Reagan said, "I made the commitment to one of the first appointments to the Supreme Court vacancy would be the most qualified woman that I could possibly find, and Sandra Day O'Connor met the high standards to be appointed. Today, it shows that women were able to reach high goals and be able to reach such hard occupations through education. She helped inspire a generation of women to pursue careers in law. And then, when Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed, 36% of law school students were women." Oh, here she comes, Miss Sandra Day O'Connor herself. Ms. O'Connor, how did it feel to be the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court?
What? I can't hear you.
How did it feel to be the first woman to be appointed to the Supreme Court?
Oh, it was excellent.
Well, 3 other women would followed the steps of Sandra Day O'Connor: Ruth Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Do you ever get tired of ratchet people? Do you ever get tired of scooters and shovels? The anti-ratchet spray is your solution. Call within the next 20 minutes and get 2 anti-ratchet sprays for the price of 1. Call 911 YOLO.
With Reagan came great triumph, along with many other accomplishments, established anti-communist defensive policies. We have with us Lemidorius Chamastorius to explain these policies.
Thank you, Bill. We're here in front of Reagan's former home, the White House. President Reagan created a set of anti-communist defense policies to go along with his second term. Reagan began the most expensive arms buildup in history that included the creation of our B-2 stealth bomber. He got the wartime economy to resurface long after the Vietnam War, while spending $2 trillion on the country's money. It skyrocketed the United States debt from $990 billion to nearly $2.9 trillion. Apparently, it worked because the war ended later this year. Along with that, Reagan also developed new policies towards the Soviet Union. He met with Mikhail Gorbachev 4 times to discuss improving United States-Soviet relations and easing the threat of nuclear war. Gorbachev was known as a kind guy in the eyes of the American people. Gorbachev and Reagan signed the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Force Treaty in 1987, which destroyed all medium-range missiles. In El Salvador and in Nicaragua, the United States supported the anti-communist side, providing aid to anti-communist rebels. The aid resulted in the Iran-Contra affair. This has been Lemidorius Chamastorius. Back to you.
Thanks, Lemidorius. That Reagan, man.
Okay, meanwhile, new this morning, a major conflict that Reagan had dealt with was with the air traffic controllers' strike. Wanting an increase in wages, Reagan threatened them with a 48-hour limit to return to work. They didn't return, and 13,000 air traffic controllers were fired. Here's Isabella Lopez with more of the story.
On August 3, 1881, 1,300 members of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization went on strike when their federal contract expired. Reagan offered an 11% increase in wages. You would think that the strike would end there and that, but it didn't. It wasn't enough for the PATCO. Instead, they demanded a 100% pay increase that would have amounted to $7 million for the taxpayers when Reagan was trying to fix the economy, and he rejected it. This strike created many difficulties for Reagan. First, the PATCO was one of the few unions that supported him when he was also a union leader himself. Eventually, it was discovered that this strike was illegal and that violated the regulation against government union striking. Reagan gave a proposal. They either returned to work in 48 hours or they would get fired. When the 48 hours had expired on August 5th, Reagan remained true to his word and fired all the striking controllers. The civilian air traffic controllers play a key role in the American defense system, and by walking off their jobs, it threatened American potential to respond to the Soviet attack, or offer a proper deterrence through the strength.
Wow, you can have traffic in the air. Now,
You guys follow back. Security? No! Sorry, we have technical difficulties. Some people want to be idiots.
Stole my job, man.
now here's a few words to reflect on Reagan.
Based on all the information brought to you by this newscast, Ronald Reagan was a good president. He tried his hardest to do what was best for the nation. His efforts in Reaganomics, the Supreme Court appointments, the air traffic controllers strike, and the anti-communist defense policies show how he put his efforts forth. As for his legacy, he'll be remembered by the hostages being released on his inauguration and his Reaganomics.
Reagan was a bad president because he was a serial taxer. As governor of California, he signed into law the largest tax in the history of any state and doubled state spending, raising taxes in 7 of his 8 years in office.
Although state tax was increased, by 1983 inflation decreased and more people found jobs.
But despite the fact that inflation decreased, Reagan grew the size of the federal government tremendously to benefit him and increased federal spending.
Although Reagan grew the size of the federal government, to benefit himself, he put Sandra Day O'Connor into the government, and it was a big change to U.S. history.
Yes, he changed history by putting Sandra Day O'Connor into the Supreme Court, but he also didn't abide by it. Reagan illegally funneled weapons to Iran and sold these arms to officials in Iran, which was subject to an arms embargo at the time in exchange for American hostages.
Yes, he gave weapons to Iran, but he used this to catalyze the end of the Cold War. You need to lose a battle in order to end the war. But this war has been going on for a very long time now, and him ending it has made a change in U.S. history.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for, the answering of the live tweets. From @Vanessa Roseanne, Diane, how did you get your hair so curly? Well, I use macadamia nut oil. Thank you, Vanessa.
No, you didn't. From @the only Andre, Bill, where did you get that tie? Not from anywhere you can afford.
2 hours later.
@Manders, oh my God, you're the best news channel ever. We appreciate it, we really do.
Thank you, because we are the best news channel.
@Brian Williams asks, you stole my job, you. Thank you for watching. I'm Bill Sawyer.
I'm Diane Baker.
And this has been Channel 11 News.
12 o'clock midnight.
They do a better job than him. Reagan was a successful president. Yeah, okay. Turn that thing on.